It was a wild, wild week, with stock and bond markets moving violently up and down in response to the Trump tariffs, China's retaliation, and growing recession fears. Meanwhile, on updates specific to real estate, the spring inventory increase is underway. Buyers have more options today than they've had in several years. Will the affordability kill another spring home buying season? Are you looking? Let's talk. I'm a real estate professional with an expertise in financing. Connect with me for a consultation and to get mortgage ready. I encourage you to get pre-approved. Although my updates are meant to focus on real estate and mortgages, it's hard to ignore the tariffs news because they directly affect inflation, the economy, the cost to build a new home, the Fed's policy rate decisions, bond yields, and mortgage rates. So bear with me while I attempt to summarize a wild 2 weeks. After the markets closed on April 2nd, President Trump unveiled a new base tariff of 10% and discounted reciprocal tariffs that went as high as 90% for Vietnam. China was hit with an additional 34% tariff. Note, Canada and Mexico were excluded from these new tariffs because they already got hit with their own special tariffs a few weeks earlier. Here was the market reaction on April 3rd. On April 4th, China retaliated with a 34% tariff on U.S. goods effective April 10th. On April 7th, President Trump threatened an additional 50% tariff on China if they didn't back down on their April 4th tariff plans. On April 9th, with China refusing to blink, the U.S. raised its tariffs on Chinese goods to 104%, and China promptly raised their tariffs on U.S. goods to 84%. But then the U.S. announced that the implementation of the discounted reciprocal tariffs from April 2nd would be delayed by 90 days for all countries except China, to give time for these countries to negotiate deals. After all that, the NASDAQ Composite Index is now only 3.5% below where it was at the end of the day on April 2nd, pre-tariffs. However, the yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury is 38 basis points higher, and average mortgage rates are once again at 7%. We just can't manage to keep mortgage rates lower for very long. Something always happens. In this case, it looks like a combination of the risk-off trade reversing and a liquidity squeeze prompting investors to sell U.S. Treasuries. To be honest, I don't know. But I was looking forward to a spring selling season with mortgage rates near 6.5%, and now we're at 7% again. Here's what the Fed funds rate futures market is currently pricing in for rate cuts. Inflation slowed sharply in March, and no one cared. Any other week, the sharp drop in CPI would have bond prices soaring and bond yields, and by extension mortgage rates, falling. Any other time, such news would stoke optimism that Americans' cost of living is no longer surging. But this progress lands as countries, businesses, markets, and consumers grapple with America's most severe escalation of its tariff rate in more than a century. The spring selling season is upon us. The March 2025 update to the Realtor.com residential listing database was pretty encouraging. The number of active listings nationwide rose 5% month over month to 893,000 units. That's up 28% year over year. There's a lot more inventory for buyers to choose from, particularly in states like Texas and Florida, where inventory levels are back to pre-pandemic levels. In 2024, homebuyers surveyed by the National Association of Realtors said that they expected they would stay in their home a median of 15 years. Just a few years ago, that figure was 10 years. What's changed? Higher home prices and mortgage rates have encouraged people to stay put, yes, but also there were fewer younger buyers in 2024 who tend to move homes more often. As soon as mortgage rates come down, there will be a rush of younger first-time buyers. This will naturally lead to more households transitioning. Thanks for tuning in to my mortgage and housing update. I'm a real estate professional with an expertise in financing. Connect with me for a consultation and to get mortgage ready. I encourage you to get pre-approved.